I remembered I need to record this. There we go. So we are recording, so please don't swear. But there are a number of parents that emailed me and said they couldn't make the meeting. Could we please record it so they could join in? So I have a list of things I want to go through. If it's a crucially important question, please interrupt. Otherwise, if you could wait to the end, and I plan to spend a good chunk of time at the end doing a question and answer period about any questions that you have. How many people are Zooming for the first time right now? Anybody? Okay, so I would assume then that you're all familiar with chat. So we're going to start. I'm going to ask everybody, if you are a first-time high school parent, please say yes in the chat. You have 30 seconds, go. 5. Okay. Well, this is exciting. So looks like maybe 5 to 8 of you are first-time high school parents. Let me give you a brief rundown of me so you can get to know me a little bit. Like I said, my name is Mike Reedy. I've been at Prospect for, this is my 29th year. This is my 31st year in education. I taught for two years in the Chicago Public Schools at Lane Tech in particular, fresh out of college. And then I was fortunate enough to get a job here. I've been here since then. I will die in this building. I love Prospect, and I'm sure for those of you that are new, you're gonna love this place also. Aside from teaching math here, I also, for close to 25 years, I was the boys and girls head varsity volleyball coach. And then I resigned from girls probably about 5 years ago. So I now referee volleyball for girls, and I'm still the boys varsity volleyball coach. Aside from that, I do a lot of work with student teachers. I have a mentee this year that this poor sucker is just starting education, and he's getting into this mess, so he has no idea what he's in for. But great guy, and I really like working with new teachers and try to instill in them the same passion that I've had for 30 plus years in education. I have 2 children. Both of them are adults. My son graduated from Notre Dame. He now works for a marketing firm, lives in the city. My daughter also has a marketing degree from Indiana. She works for Target up in Minneapolis. She's got great stories about working for Target. And I end up picking her brain a lot because they have people on staff that their only job is to make Zoom entertaining. So she gets memos about, here's what you're going to do on your next Zoom. Ask this question. You know, like for instance, would you rather fight 1 horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses? So they spend numerous hours talking about that kind of stuff at Target. And I'm going to try to bring some of that into the classroom also. So that's my history. I have taught geometry for at least 2 sections of geometry, all 30 years of my education. I would consider myself an expert on it. I also teach calculus. I've been teaching calculus for 15 years. So those are my 2 classes. I'm on both ends of the spectrum. I teach geometry to freshmen and calculus to seniors. It's fun to see students that I had as freshmen now coming into my calculus class and seeing how much they've changed and sometimes stayed the same. Okay, so I have a list of things I want to go through. I know for some of you this might not be the ideal situation. And there's nothing I can do about that. So the way I'm operating is I'm just moving forward. I'm making the best of the situation that we have, and I hope that you're doing the same. I am going to ask a lot out of all of you. And what I need from you is to help me help your child establish a healthy learning environment. The spring was a completely different animal. Our hands were tied. There were things that we couldn't do. We couldn't hold kids accountable. Their grades couldn't change. That's all bets are off for that. And now we have a different scenario. And so I want to try to create an environment virtually where kids are comfortable and they can still learn just as well as they could have if they're sitting in the classroom. Can I do that? I don't know. I think I can get pretty close, but it's going to take a lot of work. The first week in particular, my main focus is going to be trying to get the students comfortable with me and try to get the students comfortable with each other. And that's not going to be an easy task. We probably won't do any traditional math for at least the first 3 or 4 math classes. It's going to be more thinking activities, getting to know your group activities, finding your group. Who are they going to work with in a group? We did find in the spring that large classes on Zoom doesn't work. So like, for instance, now I can only see 25 of you, even though we have 28. So there's 3 people off on the side of my screen that I have no idea what they look like. And the same thing happens in the classroom. And so I found a lot of success with breakout sessions where you put them into smaller groups and you get a lot more production out of that. Okay, so let's talk about the healthy work environment. I've read a number of studies over the summer. My niece is a psychologist who works specifically with high school age students, and they all seem to agree on the same thing. You need a workspace to be productive. And I'm sure for those of you that are working from home have realized the same thing. If you're sitting on the couch watching Netflix, you're probably not doing the best job you could. The same is true with kids. With that in mind, if possible, and I understand that every household has different situations. If possible, I would love to see each kid have a spot to go, whether it's the kitchen table, a desk in their bedroom, the garage, the backyard. I don't care where it is. It can't be somewhere like bed. I mean, in the spring, I literally had kids Zooming from under their covers in their bed. And it's not healthy. They can't learn well. It's frustrating for me because I've gotten out of bed. Why can't I stay in bed? So get out of bed, find some place productive to work. No hats, take your hood off. Similar situation that you have in the classroom. Respond when called on. A common thing that happened to me in the spring was that if you look at our Zoom, for instance, I'm seeing a bunch of faces, but then I see a bunch of just names. And so kids aren't stupid. I mean, they would log into Zoom, I would see their name there, and then they would go play Fortnite. And then when I'd call on them and I'd say something like, Christine Bartles, how are you today?
I'm fine, Mr. Reedy. How are
There
you?
go. Thank you. I just called on you because you're the first one without a picture. So
I was muted.
I know. So imagine that and no one responds and you keep calling their name. It becomes clear to me that they're not there. So their video should be on. It's going to take some practice learning how to mute and how not to mute. And I'm sure you've been in Zooms where somebody doesn't have their computer muted and they start yelling at the dog. It's awkward for everybody. And a lot of this stuff is just going to be programming the kids to understand what it is to have a healthy work environment. And that's one of my goals, and that's where you can help. I mean, if it's, if your child has class at, let's say, 11:15, and it's 11:30 and they're under the covers in their room, there's probably something going on. We're also going to work with them on how to organize their iPads to keep things under control. Since almost everything they're going to be doing is a digital environment, our class in particular is a complete digital environment. By that, I mean that everything that they do can be done on the iPad. That doesn't mean that if they would prefer to work on paper and pencil, they can print everything that we do at home and work on it paper and pencil, and they can even turn it in from their paper and pencil. I have Calc kids in particular frequently prefer to work on paper and pencil, so they just take a picture of their homework and send that to me digitally. But it's going to take some time to teach the students what this looks like. And some of them are coming from a middle school where they were very digital. Some of them may have never touched an iPad. I operate the first week or so assuming that no one knows how to work an iPad. And I get a lot of eye rolls like, yes, I know how to turn it on. I know how to do, but I would rather reiterate something to a student that already knows than lose a kid who has no idea what's going on. The other issue that I can't control that I would ask your help with is the phones. And so in my classroom, if we were having this on a traditional parent night, In my classroom, I have a phone dock, which is over on the wall over there. And it's a spot where they come in and they put their phone in the dock. It's there where they can see it. They have a numbered slot. And we go about our business. And at the end of the day, at the end of the period, they grab their phone and they leave. I can't do that. And so what I did see is a lot of phones off on the side where, you know, a lot of this is going on. Best thing to do is just have them put that phone somewhere where it's out of reach. I can't control that. They're going to be on Snapchat. They're going to be texting their friends. They're going to be doing all those things that I can't control. So if you happen to be home, just check to see what's going on. If they're on Zoom with me, where's their phone? And that's not to say that we're not going to do some activities where they would use the phone, but in general, they probably shouldn't be on social media when they're trying to learn geometry. Okay? Let's stop for a second. I'm going to take a drink. Any questions so far?
These items that you bring up are, to me, seem like just standard what I call Zoom protocol.
Correct.
Has the district thought about just issuing, hey, these are suggested guidelines that out of respect to your teacher and your other classmates, we'd like everybody to follow?
Don't hold me to this, but I think they are doing that exact thing today.
Okay.
And I'm trying to think how to be politically correct here. I'm telling you what I'd like to see out of my classroom. That might not necessarily jive with the district.
Yeah.
And so unless any of you have let's say, for instance, the district comes out and says, Mike, you can't tell the kids not to wear a hat. And I'm telling them not to wear a hat. That's an issue that I'm going to have to deal with the district, but it's still something that I would expect to be followed in my classroom. And that's what I'd expect to be following on Zoom.
Sure.
But your suggestion is a great idea. And yes, they are working in that. I don't know if they're going to send out a blanket statement to all parents, but right now, the only thing I can control is the 70 minutes I spend with your child. So I'm looking at kind of the microcosm here, but great question. Anybody else? If you have a question, just unmute yourself and start talking, please.
I was wondering, you were saying earlier they need to have a phone to take some tests and stuff. So do they need the phone and iPad?
No, there might be some instances where something that we're doing, they could do more efficiently if they use a phone and an iPad. The only thing they really need from me is an iPad.
Thank you.
Yep. And if something comes up where they do absolutely need the phone, I would contact all of you and let you know, hey, on Tuesday of next week, we're doing an activity where they're going to use their phone to do blah, 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 blah. You know, and some of it might be, especially early on, Monday, I might very well say to your son or daughter, okay, we're halfway through the class. You have 10 minutes. Go outside and take a selfie of you out in the sunshine, just to get out away from your computer and do something healthy. That would be the extent early on of what I would require for the phone. For the most part, the phone should be put away and not used.
The reason I was asking is my daughter don't have a phone yet. So that's why we need to get one.
No. The reason I'm laughing is because I get that all the time. I get calls from parents that say, did you really tell my daughter she needs this $700 calculator? Like, no, she needs a calculator, not that fancy one. So no, they don't need a phone. Okay.
How many students are going to be in the class?
I think my roster, I haven't looked at actual numbers, but it's 26 to 30. My classes are usually pretty full.
I have a question about the calculator that you mentioned. Will they need a calculator, or there's an app on the iPad that can serve as a calculator?
They will need a calculator. The one we recommend is the TI-84 or the TI-84 Plus. They won't need it right away. They will need it at some point in time. And
Okay.
I will give them plenty of warning ahead of time. The problem with using the iPad as a calculator is it takes them away from the other things we're doing with the iPad. In a classroom setting, it's a little bit easier to use use the iPad as a calculator, but it's not something that's allowed in a lot of other math classes. So I'd rather get them started on the calculator right away.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Anything else before we move on? We'll take a number of breaks as we go. So if you have a question, jot it down and we'll come back to it.
No, but the calculator, just to reinforce that, it really is a worthwhile investment. I know it's more expensive than, the elementary and secondary ones. My son is going into his sophomore year of college and he still uses it. So,
I'm putting in chat the recommended calculators. If you haven't purchased one yet, that's probably the most common. It's not the only one, but it is the one that most classes use. I can work with just about any calculator, but some people get persnickety about it. Okay, so like I said, one of the things I'm gonna talk to the students about is how to communicate in class. And so you see now in the Zoom situation, we talked already about muting when appropriate, but also I'm gonna talk to them about what happens if you have a question. How do I do that? And I think that every class is going to handle this differently. Some people may say, if you have a question, post it in chat. If you have a question, unmute yourself and talk. If you have a question, wave your hand in front of the screen. That doesn't necessarily work because I can't see everybody. So these are the things that I'm going to have to work with them on. For my communication with the students outside of class, almost all of that communication will happen through Schoology. Schoology is a program that we use to share worksheets, data, everything that they need, they're going to get from Schoology. If it's an individual issue, then I will use email, but I try to stay away from email whenever possible with the students. However, if you have any questions whatsoever, please feel free to email me. The phone situation is a little weird. Just so you know, the way our phones work is if you call my phone right now, you'll get a voicemail. However, that voicemail does dump into my email. So I will get the voicemails. And to be honest, a lot of times, even if I get an email from you, I will probably call you back because I like talking to people more so than emails, because there's a pandemic going on and you talk to so few people that talking to a new voice is rather refreshing. Okay, so that's communication. Then as far as when the class actually starts, every day we have built in a 0 hour. So that is from 8:45 to 9:55 every day is what's called 0 hour. It's designed, I think it's designed to give me time to plan. However, I'm also going to use it as an opportunity for students to get help. One of the most difficult things that your child is going to have to deal with is advocating for themselves. And advocating for themselves sometimes just simply means, I don't understand this material, or I have a doctor's appointment on Tuesday. What am I going to miss? To something even more, a family issue. My sister has COVID. I'm freaking out, or, I've seen it all in 30 years of education. That obviously isn't something that should be taken care of in a public forum. And it's a little difficult to deal with on Zoom. So that's where email would come into play. What I don't want to use email for is, hey, Mr. Reedy, you didn't give me the points for problem number 2 on day 3's homework. That needs to be taken care of in a different situation. Okay. Turn the page.
Can I ask one question?
Certainly.
Do you allow kids to the mute and stop video? Because my son might need to go to the bathroom during the class.
And I was going to bring that exact thing up. So being in high school, I have always operated in the idea that I'm going to give them every opportunity, and they can keep those opportunities until they screw up and tell me that they don't deserve it anymore. So I'm on the assumption that if their video goes out, that they had to go to the bathroom or they had to take care of something. So it's not a big deal. I'm not gonna stop and say, oh my God, Johnny, your video went off. What are you doing? Knowing that he just had to get up and use facilities. Does that answer your question? Okay,
Thank
good.
you.
Okay, so let's talk about the course now. And I know that a number of my coworkers came to the freshman houses for the PEAK program. And for some reason, our course got brought up a lot, that people are freaking out about honors geometry. I don't really know why that happens, other than I do know that we are we being the honors geometry team is sometimes villainized in the middle schools. If you don't learn how to do this, just wait till you get Mr. Reedy next year. He's going to chew you up and spit you out, which I don't really appreciate, but I know it probably happens. And I'd be stupid if I didn't realize that I can be a fairly intimidating person. I'm 6'3", I have 2 full sleeves of tattoos. So some kids have a hard time realizing that I'm a lot of bark and very little bite. But along with that, I'm expecting them to act like freshmen in high school. And so they're going to have to take responsibility for their actions. They're going to have to figure out to solve some problems. And sometimes that problem will be as easy as, you know, he didn't give me the points on that assignment. How do I ask him for those points? How do we look at this? To, I have to go to the bathroom during class, to, you know, something big happened in my family and I'm just not ready for today. And along those lines, it's also going to be different than some of the other math courses they've taken in the past. A lot of these students I found in the past come in and they've operated under the same methods for 8 years of school. And that is, the teacher tells them what they need to know, they write it down, they go home and memorize it, they do 10 problems just like that, and then they come back 2 days later and just puke it back on a quiz. And that's not how we operate. A number of students get very frustrated with me when I won't answer their question. When their question is something like, how do you do this? And it becomes more of a guided situation than it is purely instructional. Even before COVID, I'm not a very lecture-based, this isn't a very lecture-based course. It's not me standing up and spouting off for 50 minutes and then them doing a bunch of homework problems. It just doesn't work that way. And some students have a hard time adjusting to that. Some of them dive into it and they love it to death. Almost every kid by the end of the year realizes that this is a really good way to learn, especially math. As I said, our emphasis here is on learning and understanding versus memorization. And so this might be the first time that their teacher sits down with them and says, hey, can you explain to me how you know that the angles of that triangle add up to 180 degrees? Because in the past, they've been told that piece of information, and then 2 days later, they tell you the angles in a triangle add up to 180 degrees. They don't look at the reason why, and they don't strive for learning and understanding. That's where I come in, and that's what sometimes makes them very uncomfortable. Talked about, along with the learning and understanding is also some exploration and analysis. So here's a scenario. I'd like you to go play with this scenario for a while and tell me what you notice. Well, is this right? And they also don't like when I say to them, sometimes there are no right answers, or even worse, sometimes there are multiple answers, because they're coming out of an algebra mindset, that I frequently call it, where we're all going to do a problem together and we're all going to get 7 as the answer. And if you didn't get 7, you did something wrong. It doesn't necessarily apply in this class. We can solve a problem and everybody can get different answers and we're all right. And I can see some of you even getting uncomfortable with that idea, but it happens. A couple years ago, we realized that as students came to our class, they were demonstrating a wide range of algebra skills for a variety of reasons. Some middle schools taught it differently. Some middle schools covered this and didn't cover that. And we realized that early on, it was frustrating for everybody. It was frustrating for the students that had never learned this material to be expected to learn it. It was frustrating for the teacher, realizing that not everybody was with us, and also harmful for me, not harmful, but disturbing for me when I realized I was inadvertently leaving children behind. So what we've done is we've decided, let's just teach them everything we need to know. So we're going to spend the first couple weeks going back through algebra. And it might be boring for some of your children because they just rocked algebra. They did a great job. Some of your children, however, might be very appreciative because their algebra skills aren't where they need to be. And we don't necessarily just want to say, okay, Johnny, your algebra skills aren't good enough, get out. I would rather get them to where they need to be for this class, and then move forward. So if you know, in the first couple of weeks, if they come home and you say, hey, what are you doing in geometry? And they say algebra, I don't want anybody freaking out. That's why we're doing it. And I talked about the maturity and the responsibility. Okay. As far as grades go, one of the things we adopted a couple of years ago is we don't give tests in this class. And I'm talking pre-COVID. So the last couple of years, for instance, we didn't give tests. What we found, tests were causing too much stress. It was, the large tests were either destroying students' grades or boosting them to the point of unreality, I guess would be a term. So what we did is we decided it's healthier to do multiple smaller quizzes over time. So in the past, years ago, we would do 1 or 2 quizzes per chapter and then this big monster 100-point test. And if I was having a bad day on that test and my dog ran away in the morning and I'm just not there and I didn't perform on that test, I'm done. And it just wasn't productive. So instead of 2 or 3 quizzes per chapter or per section, we now give 4 or 5 quizzes. And sometimes those quizzes are 10-minute quizzes. Sometimes they're 30-minute quizzes. Sometimes they're 1 problem. Sometimes they're 10 problems. We mix it up. Sometimes they're with partners. We do a lot of group work in here. You know, education seems to be the only arena where you're not allowed to work with others. You know, I work with others in my job. I'm sure all of you work with others. I watch my kids work with others. Education, all of a sudden, you got to be by yourself, and I don't necessarily subscribe to that. Okay. Oh, the other thing I would ask is if there is something I need to know about your child, regardless of how minor it may seem, you're putting me at a disadvantage if I'm spending 70 minutes a day with your child and I don't know that he or she blah, blah, blah. Okay. And you can fill in the blah, blah, blah because it could be something minor. It could be something major. And I kind of need to know that. Now, how are you gonna get that information to me? Email would work best. And I will post my email. By the way, for those of you that are new, all of our email works the same. It is the teacher's first name dot their last name followed by @d214.org. Now, the only catch is you might not know that Mr. Reedy's first name is Mike. But if you need to reach me, there is my email. I'm sure there's a number of things I forgot to talk about. So what I'd like to do now is open up the floor. If you got any questions, fire them off. And I'm sure in the process of you asking questions, I'll think of I'll think of the things that I forgot to talk about. If you have a question, just unmute yourself and start talking. Or we
Mike,
can just sit here and stare at each other.
Oh.
Go ahead.
My son had you his freshman year, and they had the iPads, but obviously learning was much different. It was all in person.
Sure.
But you were one of the few classrooms, I think, where you had the ability to record videos. And you recorded your daily lessons so that if kids were sick, they didn't fall behind. They could watch that. Are you still doing that?
100%.
Okay.
So without going into a big, long story, a couple of years ago, they built me this beautiful classroom I'm sitting in. So, and you don't need a room tour right now, but I'll tell you that there's an 80-inch touch screen on the other side of my computer. And then around the room, you can see one over my shoulder. There are 6 TVs that all have AirPlay on them, which sounds great because your kids aren't going to see it for a couple months. But anyways, I'll be doing most of my work off the ClearTouch, which is the touch screen there, and it has the capability to record lessons. So what she's talking about is in a day where it is more of a traditional lecture-based situation, I record my lessons. And what you would see in that recording is the board that I'm working on, and you'd hear my voice and the students' voices. And so you can hear the interaction that I have. You can hear the questions that the kids ask. I record it, and then usually by the end of the day, I make that available in Schoology for the kids. And so if they're absent, they can get caught up. If they're just having a bad day and they just couldn't keep up with what was going on, they can go home and watch the video. What happens early on is they will ask a question in class and they rush home to watch the video so they can hear themselves ask a question. Whatever they want to do with the video, they will make it available. What I don't do is record videos of classes where we're doing more group work / exploration type stuff because it won't mean anything to anybody. So don't freak out if I don't have a video for every single day. But like this, I'm recording this lesson now. When we're done, I will post this and send an email to people that couldn't make the meeting so they could watch the video on our discussion. Other questions?
Just out of curiosity, will quizzes be administered like the students write on paper and you're watching them live, or do you have an electronic platform?
For me?
Yeah.
As far as seeing their work. Yeah, we all have the capability, the students included, to share their screens. And so let's suppose we're doing an activity and I put the top row all into a breakout room together. I can come into that breakout room and say, okay, Tracy, show me what you're doing. And she can share her screen and show me exactly what she's doing. Okay, by that I mean, in fact, I can do it just to show you. If I do this, I'm not sure what you're seeing right now, but I just shared my screen. So you're seeing what's going on my laptop. Do you see a picture of a woman standing by a truck? Okay, so that's my desktop. So if I, if I open a folder or I do anything like that, you can see it. They can do the same thing from their iPads. I can do the same thing from my touch screen. You could do it from a phone, but again, we're not going to be using the phone. So that's how I can, in real time, see what kind of work they're doing. Okay. Other questions? I hope that this helped. I hope you weren't freaking out to start with, but if you were, I hope I calmed you down a little bit. If you were calm, I hope I didn't freak you out. My parting words are, if there's any issues, I'm not even gonna do that. I'm just gonna say this: communication is key. Communication with me and you, communication with you and your child, communication with me and your child and I. Okay, so as long as we're all on the same page, things are gonna go smoothly. I know, like I said, I know this isn't an ideal situation, but I think they're gonna be okay. Anything else? All right, so if you asked a question and you want to watch yourself ask that question, I'll make this video available. If anybody wants to ask a question so you can watch yourself later, ask now, because I'm about to end the meeting. No? Okay, good. If you didn't get enough of me, I'm hosting another session tomorrow and you can come back and bother me some more.
Perfect. Thank you.
Have a great day, everybody. Take care.
You too. Take care.